That's probably one of the biggest things that frustrates me with the Christian culture, to be honest with you. I heard the Lord say, don't lean on your earthly father. I need you to start leaning on your heavenly father.
Yeah.
I was desperate. I was
Mm,
desperate. I had no other option but to truly lean on him. Take the log out of your eye. Take the log out of your eye. I mean, Jesus sat with the sinners, the tax collectors. We
right.
know what that is. And
Yeah.
it's not our job to push Jesus down their throat. Our
Yes.
job is to be a light. And don't dig up and doubt what you planted in faith. Doubt will continue to knock on
Wow.
the door. Doubt will continue to come in. Doubt will continue to say, I'm here, but don't dig it up. You planted
Yeah.
something in faith.
Yo, both me and my producer in the back, we're just taking it all in right now. You're speaking. I don't care who's listening right now. This is for us. What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Shaping the Code. What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture podcast. Hope all is well with you all, family. Listen, fam, today I am elated about the guest and the conversation we're going to have. I've been wanting this guest to come on for a couple of years, ever since I discovered her few years ago on YouTube. Love what she's about, love what she's doing, love the way she's serving the Lord and serving the culture. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's the host and creator of Now with Natalie. We've got none other than Natalie and Manuel Lee with us. Welcome to the podcast, Natalie.
Hello. Thank you for having me. So
Yeah.
grateful to be here.
Yo, I'm so hyped to have you. You have no idea. I actually want to share a funny story. I was waiting till we started recording to share this story with you, but I remember being in LA one time and I believe I was in Culver City. I think I was in Culver City and I saw you, your husband, your baby,
No.
a mother, somebody, and I was like nervous. I was like, do I go up and say hello? But she's with her family. I don't want to be weird. I was like, all right, let me just keep it pushing. So I didn't say anything, but I saw you and I got
Oh,
really hyped. So
oh man. Well, now it's meant to be. It's divine. But next time, definitely come and say hi for sure.
for sure, for sure. Now I've got to. Now I've got to.
Now you got me. I'm right here.
For sure. Well, I am truly excited to have you on. When I think about the impact that you're having, when I think about the voice that God has given you in the spaces you get to occupy, man, I'm a brother over here from Minneapolis, Minnesota, super encouraged and inspired and rooting for you. And I'm really excited to get into your story, but I just want to let you know how much we appreciate what you do at Shaping the Culture. On our platform, we're all about engaging culture. And you are somebody who's engaging culture and you're doing it in a way that is tasteful, is very tasteful. And so we just so appreciate your work and what you're about, Natalie, for real, for real.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Truly humbled by those words. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, here's what I want to do for those who are living under a rock and may have no context for who you are. Can you give a little backstory for who you are and your upbringing and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I am a wife. I'm a mother. I have a daughter that's 4 years old that is essentially my boss. I am
Yeah.
also a creator, a entrepreneur. Obviously, I've created the show Now with Natalie.
Yeah.
I was in the fashion industry for quite some time. I worked with my brother, Fear of God, for
Oh, yeah.
about 3 years. And once I transitioned out of that, I knew that God was calling me to something more, something bigger. And I knew that He was calling me to bridge the gap between culture and faith and culture and
Mm,
inspiration. And so I think that's kind of where the birth of Now with Natalie came to be about.
yeah.
I've done it all my life, but just not filmed, not recorded. Having
Mm,
these honest, unearthing, defining conversations with my community. And my community happens to be people of influence and people of impact. And so I knew that
yeah.
God was making a space and room for me to be able to use my gifting
Yeah.
to glorify His name. And so, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a woman that loves creative. I love fashion. I love art. I love
Yeah.
um, all things flowers and all sorts of creativity.
Yeah.
But yeah, now Natalie is a big passion of mine and is something that I know is a call, Lord, that I had to answer and really surrender to.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. If you don't mind me asking, can you share your testimony? Because I have some follow-up questions with what you said, but I feel like maybe if I
Sure.
heard some of that, it'd kind of give some more context.
Testimony went like
Coming to
trans.
faith, like making your faith your own, the moment where you felt like God became real to you. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I think the moment when God became real to me is when I moved to LA and I lived by myself and I was actually living with a friend of mine. She had a studio apartment. I was living on her couch.
Yeah.
Um, Working penny pinching, working being a PA in production, doing all ends of kinds of jobs just to kind of make ends meet. And
Yeah.
there was a moment where I felt like I heard the Lord say, "Don't lean on your earthly father. I need you to start leaning on your heavenly father." And that was the process of my
Mm,
journey of truly surrendering and understanding what it meant to be like in relationship with God.
yeah.
I've grew up in the church. I mean, my mom, what has been instilled in us, me and my siblings, is by way of a product of my mom and dad's dedication of putting the word in us. But there's nothing like experiencing it on your own and having
Right.
faith on your own.
Right.
And so when I moved to LA, I remember hearing that so clearly when the Lord was like, "No, you can't ask your dad for money. You can't ask him to, to get your bills. Like, lean on me." And I'll
Yeah.
never forget, there was a day where I was shortchanged. I can't remember the exact amount for rent. And I kept hearing the Holy Spirit say, like,
Mm,
trust me, trust me, trust me. And a
right.
day or two later, I received a residual check in the mail for the amount that I needed and a little bit more. And
Wow.
that increased my faith. And it's not necessarily about the
That's
dollar
good.
amount, but as we
Yeah.
know, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And so,
Right.
really be able to experiencing Him in the unknown and the uncertainty, and to see His
Yeah.
goodness come to life. It was a shift for me,
Yeah.
because I knew not only that He was real. I mean, I knew that He was real my whole life, but like I
Yeah.
said, when you experience it, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um, so from there, my faith definitely accelerated, but getting to know Him was more of a yearning for me than it was now, than it was then, because
Yeah.
I was desperate. I was
Mm,
desperate. I had no other option but to truly lean on Him.
that's good.
And it's the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Wow. That's profound. I actually really resonate with that story. Even with this podcast, January of 2024, we stepped
Mm,
out in faith.
yeah,
I left my 9 to 5 I mean, I've been podcasting for 8 years, but I was like, I felt God calling me to do this more full time.
yeah,
And when I stepped out, I'm like, all right, Lord, I don't know if you're going to provide or, if you're going to come through. And it's been like 15, 16 months later, and I've never missed a bill. I've never been in lack. And God has just opened doors and given me opportunity. And so I really resonate with your story about like looking to the Lord when you're desperate, when all you could do
yeah,
is look up, right? That's all you have.
yeah,
And then He just
yeah.
meets you on the other side of that. And so I resonate with that deeply. One thing I wanted to ask you about is I'm hearing, the motivation and the heart behind the podcast now with Natalie. You shared that a lot of what you're doing with the podcast you were already doing in private. It was, the
Right.
podcast was an overflow of what was going on
Yes.
behind the scenes. And something I so
Yes.
appreciate about you is you know how to merge both faith and culture. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times Christians would argue that they're at odds with one another, that there is no middle ground, that you can infuse that. I wanted to ask you how were you able to see that you can merge the two and that one can impact the other? When you were behind the scenes having these conversations, like, is it something you were taught growing up, the way you were raised? Is it something somebody taught you? Like, what was the inspiration and heart behind knowing that like these two can work together?
That's probably one of the biggest things that frustrates me with the Christian culture, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
is, I think for me, I'm taught, and hopefully every believer, to come as you are.
Mm-hmm.
Come as you are. The only one
Yeah,
that can judge you is the man above. And I think that we
that's
have
right.
this proclivity and this intensity to actually judge thy neighbor for their
Mm,
sin, and not realizing that every no sin is greater than the other.
that's right.
And so for me, I know that my call, it wasn't a conference call, it was a call between me and the Lord, call on my life is to bridge that gap, regardless of what walk of life that you come from. But
Yeah.
know that in having in these conversations, I will always expose the Father. I will always
Mm,
expose goodness in a way in which, because we all have God in us, it's
yes.
just how exactly is that being displayed in one's life,
Yeah.
and so I think it was a no-brainer that being able to merge the two. No one is exempt of sin. No one is exempt of, because you are a believer then you may not be able to do this or you do that. um,
Yeah.
and so for me it was just something natural to me.
Yeah.
And really, what my mom would always say growing up is, take the log out of your eye, take the log out of your
Mm,
eye. I
mm,
mean, Jesus sat with the sinners, the tax collectors. We
right.
know what that is. And so for
Right.
me, I'm very well aware of what I'm called to do, which is creating and continue to create a safe space
Yeah.
for believers and unbelievers to come and sit at the table and just
Yeah.
to listen and receive and hear from them as well. I
Yeah.
think, like I said, one of the tension points that I can have in the Christian culture is, well, if you're not doing this, then you're that. Well, it's like, well, let's
Right.
look at you. What are you doing? What's up with you?
Yeah.
And so I wish that we have to also realize that pushes away the unbelievers, that pushes away the lost sheep.
Right.
We have to welcome them, we have to
Right.
embrace them. And
Yeah.
so I do believe that the people that do come on my platform know that about me, because that's who I am at my core. And at the
Yeah.
end of me, it's like when we
Yeah.
get to those pearly gates, we don't know who's going in and who's going out. We don't know,
Yeah.
what's and what's not. Like,
Yeah.
yes, did you do the simple prayer and all this, but we don't know their story behind closed doors. And
Right.
so that is probably why people feel safe and
Mm,
seen, because
mm,
we once were them and still are.
yeah. Man, I so resonate with that. I'm like,
Sorry, it's
no.
something that makes me feel like, guys, how are we? I feel like we exempt a lot of people because
Yes.
of maybe their belief system or their lifestyles, but don't realize that no sin is greater than the other, and judgment is going to push them away. We
Yes.
have to say, come,
Yes.
come, come as you are. And
Yeah.
it's not our job to push Jesus down our throat, to push Jesus down their throat. Our
Yes.
job is to be a light,
Yeah.
and for them to yearn that and yearn
Yeah.
to see what is inside of us. So,
Yeah. I love that. You're reaching already. We're just like two questions in and you just dropping gems left and right. I love to see this is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Yeah.
but
A
I know
couple
you feel me.
I so feel you. I so feel you. Actually, a couple of years ago, I had a guest come on. He's actually a friend now, but prominent Christian figure, and he left the faith. And I had him to come on. I had him come on the podcast to just hear his story, just to understand. I just want to listen, And I had a lot of Christians like in my comments, DM me, people unfollow me, people. They're like, "How could you platform somebody who doesn't believe anymore?" And one thing I realized, Natalie, is like we have a lot of Christian content that teaches us how to defend the faith, how to talk about the
Mm,
faith, but we don't have a lot of Christian content teaching us how to listen and
come
how
on.
to just hear people's story. And that's why I really love what you're doing, is because you curate those safe spaces for people to tell their story. And I always tell people who like want to critique the work that I do, like my job isn't to save anyone, it's to serve all people, right? And
Um,
sometimes in a conversation, you're not going to like correct or rebuke all that. Sometimes you just want to understand and listen and
yeah.
make sense. You want to lead with curiosity. And I so wanted to ask you this, like in you taking the approach that you have taken, what are some of the things that you have observed from people? Like as you're curating a safe space, as you're letting people tell their story, as you're realizing that, hey, we're all sinners, we're all on this journey, like how have your guests, or like behind the scenes, your friends felt encouraged, empowered, maybe even more inclined to listen to what you believe and what you're about?
Yeah, I mean, just that they've been able to, I think, when you relinquish control of trying to maybe shift one's ideology or faith or perspective and
Yeah.
really just sit in who you are and what you believe
Mm,
and take the judgment lens off.
yeah.
um, I feel like that's how I've been able to see the fruit of the
Mm,
people that have been around me and that
yeah.
have felt safe, is because they're able to express certain things that maybe they wouldn't want to a other believer, if you will, because they would feel judged or they would feel
Yeah.
ridiculed. Um, but that's not what we were taught, and that's not who
Mm,
Jesus, was to around, when he was around. But I just think that we have to have a perspective of what would Jesus do,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to what can I teach you? What would
Yeah.
he do?
Right. That's good. I love that. That's so evident in his ministry is
Yes.
they actually say that Jesus gave like 5 sermons in his lifetime. Like in
I
3.5 years
know.
of ministry.
Right. But
And
that right there, you just said it.
yeah,
He gave five. So if
yeah,
he gave five, what else was he doing? He was being the vessel. He was being the
yeah,
instrument. He was being the light. That's why
yes.
you hear be the hands and feet of
That's
Jesus,
good.
not
That's good.
mouth, you know?
Yeah, that's real. That's real. And you see it, like the way he serves people, the way he loves on people. He heal, like
Yes.
he embodies and personifies love. And in the way he leads his life, people are persuaded, and that's so powerful. I wanted to ask you, like, when you took that step of faith, leaving fear of God with your brother and stepping into Now with Natalie, or just the podcast space. I know I've talked to a lot of Christians who feel like God is calling them to like take that next step, right? To step out in faith and believe that what God is doing behind the scenes, he wants to bring to the forefront. And oftentimes people, due to fear or, the unknown, they kind of like stay behind, especially if they're in a good situation or comfortable situation. What was that like for you to actually step out and trust that God was on the other side of your obedience, your yes?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It wasn't easy. It was very, very
Mm,
difficult. Actually, I didn't even really get the concept of Now with Natalie until after I left and stepped. And so I think
mm,
that that's indicative of not ask God to order our steps if we're not willing to walk.
that's
And I
right.
think the reality
That's a
is
word.
that if we are willing to take the step, we're never going to see the full staircase. We're never going to see the
Mm,
whole thing laid out.
mm,
We
mm,
only see in part. That's what scripture says. It's literally putting one foot in front of the other. And
yeah.
I didn't even really come to like truly believe that I had a gifting in what I did until I was in it.
Wow.
And so a lot of times
Wow.
we won't collide into the purpose until we walk. And so I
Wow.
think the word for people is just to continue to step and
Mm,
continue to walk, and don't and keep your blinders on,
hmm.
and don't and and I think too, you can't look for external validation for that internal result. You can't
Mm,
look for outside people to tell you certain things about what God's told you to do
yeah.
if he told you. It's
That's
something
right.
that you have to know internally. And I think that's also where my faith increased and my time with the Lord increased and private time increased, because I have to hear, I have to know. Like
Yeah.
I have to trust God's will, not my will. And a lot of
Mm,
times we have the propensity to do what we feel like we're
yeah.
called to do. And that's where we get in trouble. But
Yeah.
if we are being led by something bigger than ourselves, and we are pulling from something bigger than ourselves, then you're right on track.
Yeah.
However, it's a process,
Yeah.
and it's going to take time, and And don't dig up and doubt what you planted in faith. Doubt will continue to knock on the
Wow.
door. Doubt will continue to come in. Doubt will continue to say, I'm here, but don't dig
Sheesh.
it up. You planted
Yeah.
something in faith. And so it was a journey. It was a journey, and it's still
Man.
a journey. I mean, entrepreneurship is not for the
Yeah.
weak, but when you are connected to the vine, when you are connected to the source, you can and will always be in flow. I always say, like, we ask God to do all these things in our lives, and we're asking, for him to position us, but it's like, are we really positioned for what we prayed for? Are
Wow.
we ready to receive the
Yeah.
things that we're asking God to give us? And I think that when you
Man.
are potentially about to step out on faith, be prepared to die to self. Be prepared to die to your flesh daily.
Yeah.
Be prepared to position yourself, to posture yourself to receive all the things. And also too, for anybody out there, it's like, we have this desire to have all these grandiose things. We want a podcast. We want
Yeah.
this. We want that. We want the clothing store. We want
Yeah.
whatever. And then God takes us through a season of troubled waters. But in our reality, it's not troubled waters. It's just a season of cleansing, a season of grabbing hold of the things that we need to sustain us
Yeah.
for what we're asking God for us to do.
Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest thing. It wasn't that I knew that God called me to it, but it was withstanding the suffering. That could be very, difficult and challenging, but preparing your being
Yeah.
for the doing is more key than the doing.
Yo, yo, both me and my producer in the back, we're just taking it all in right now. You're speaking. I don't care who's listening right now. This is for us, okay?
No,
this
it's
is
for
for
me too, because it's not easy. It's not
yo.
easy.
Yeah, no, you're speaking truth right now, and this is so timely. This is like a rhema word because this is I so deeply resonate with what you're saying on so many levels, and which is going to make this conversation fun because I have so many follow-up questions. But as you're talking, I think about, there's this like African proverb of, there's this people who were living in a drought and they were praying for rain, praying for rain, praying for rain. And one day this little boy, steps outside with his umbrella, and everybody within the town was just kind of laughing at him like, silly boy, like, don't you know we're in the middle of a drought? Like, what are you doing with your umbrella? And this boy responds back by saying, well, if we're praying for rain, shouldn't we prepare for the rain? And I remember hearing this story and being rocked because, like, if I really do believe that God is going to deliver, if I really do believe that God is going to come through, if I really do believe that God is going to honor the things that he has placed on the inside of me, faith looks like preparation. What am I doing in the secret place? What am I doing with my free time? What am I doing with my thought life? Like, what am I doing with what I'm entertaining, the people I'm surrounding myself that partners with and agrees with all that I believe God is doing? And so I kind of wanted to ask you, because I know entrepreneurship is a journey, and this podcast game is like, it's like 1 week you got the numbers, and then the next week it's like, ooh, I thought that was going to do well. And then the next week, right? And so what does it look like to truly partner with God and prepare for what you believe he's called you to?
I mean, I think I just said it, but again, it's like surrender and dying to self daily. My therapist always says, like, I can't afford to not live a lifestyle of fasting.
Wow.
So, I think it's like understanding, the work and the call that you're called to do. It's coming from within, it's coming from above. And so for me, the preparation is consistently reading, consistently in my word, consistently in my prayer closet, which is my daughter's closet at the moment. Consistently staying in communion with him and being clear on what the day brings. I think and continuing to put your will on the altar. And that is very difficult. That is very hard to put your
Yeah.
desires, your will of like what you feel like something should look like. Okay, I know that I have X amount of interviews coming out. This is how I want to strategize it. I think
Yeah.
that that's good. We need to plan, we need to
Right.
prepare, but
Right.
also release the plans
Mm,
so that he then can infiltrate and put in and add those little things in, just make it, the icing on the cake. And so I
that's
think
right.
for me, I had to continue to learn to live a life of surrender and
Yeah.
relinquishing control. And that was one of the biggest things that I deal with is control. Is
Yeah.
like knowing like, okay, this, and this, and this, and this. But then when you experience a life that, again, is in a life of surrender, certain things, it's like you're never in control anyways. We're not even in control anyways, but we have
Right.
to think that we are.
Yeah.
But when we surrender to him and his will,
Mm,
I think that that is a part of the preparation. And
that's
I
right.
also think that a part of the preparation is preparing your
Mm,
being, not
mm,
necessarily the work. I think that your
that's so
gifts,
good.
as we know, your gifts will make room for you. We know
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of times we're so focused on the doing and the gifting that we forget about the being and the
Come on.
spiritual man so that we can sustain the doing.
That's so
And
good.
so for me, the last few years is just personal work,
Mm,
continuing to unbecome to become, continuing to
mm,
unpartner with offense, bitterness,
mm.
control, pride, ego,
Yeah.
unpartnering with those things to position myself
Wow.
so that I can be prepared. And so
Yeah.
again, like I said, it's like it's the personal work, it's
Yeah.
undoing, it's unbecoming, it's preparing yourself, it's preparing your spirit man. Yes, work on your craft,
Yeah.
but you need to be feeding your spirit man more than
Yeah.
your craft so that you can sustain the gifting.
That's that's a word. Something that I've been reflecting in the last couple of years with some friends and in my church community is that whenever you like open up the word of God and you find verses that pertain to God's will for our lives, right? Especially as young people, we're always, what's God's will for my life? Do I move to this school or this city? Do I work this job? Do I buy? Do I rent? Do I lease? Like we're constantly
Yeah.
trying to figure out what the next step is. And what's so fascinating is in the scriptures, whenever the will of God is brought up, it has more to do with who we are than what we do.
Come on.
So God's will for your life is that you forgive your enemy.
Come
That
on.
God's will for your life is that you submit your will to the Father. That God's
Yeah.
will for your life is to make disciples of all nations. That God's will for your life is to serve your neighbor. That God's will for
Yeah.
your life is to honor your mother and father. And I feel like a lot of the times we're looking for God's sovereign will, like the things that he hasn't made plain, and we ignore his revealed will, the things that he has made plain to us in his
Ooh, come
scripture.
on.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think that I really resonate with what you're saying about part of preparation looks like honoring the Lord and obeying him and letting him do a work in us
Yeah.
and making him priority, because at the end of the day, like even the things that we pursue, everything we pursue has an expiration date on it. But the
Yeah.
thing that does not have an expiration date is the person that we're becoming. In fact, we're becoming more and more into who we will be for all of eternity, right? And so to
Yes. Come on.
prioritize those things, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's that's good.
That's good.
I wanted to ask you, I think like, relinquishing control can be really difficult. I think sometimes, laying your will at the altar is very hard, right? It's like, we're entering into Holy Week. Easter is around the corner. And I think about Jesus in the garden, and he literally prayed, Lord, not my will, but your will. Even Jesus himself had to submit his will to the Father's will.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? Because I think that like, for me, it's really difficult because sometimes like I have a hard time believing that God wants me to give up the thing that he's called me to. But
Mm,
God also asked Abraham to give up Isaac, who was the promise,
there you
right?
go.
And
Yeah.
so what does it look like to not just give God our our sin and have him work on our sanctification and all that, but also like trust him with our purpose, trust him with our
Yeah.
career. What does it look like to give control back to him in those areas?
Great question. For me, it's not idolizing it.
Hmm.
I think that I was idolizing my work and I was making it my God.
Hmm.
And so I think from there, that's where like the sobering reality was like, okay, wait, actually, this is yours. And when certain
Yeah.
things weren't, maybe working on a production schedule or a
Yeah.
guest couldn't come on till 2 months as opposed to this month, like I could start
Yeah.
feeling myself, giving you like a pragmatic example of feeling myself feeling like, wait, why is it not doing this way? So it's like, you know what, God, here, I give it back. And then
Mm.
of course, once you back, that thing comes back and tenfold and even better. Didn't
That's
even think
good.
that, oh my God, this guest is great. Or you
Yeah.
didn't even think about that person that they came and actually came to the platform as opposed
Yeah.
to me reaching out. So I think pragmatically, it's truly just leaving it there, like
Yeah.
letting it be, not sending another follow-up email, or maybe truly just letting that thing
Yeah.
sit there and truly give it to God. I mean, I
That's
know we
good.
all know that picture of like the small teddy bear and the big teddy bear, but
Mm.
that's so revelatory for my life, even in this moment of like, okay,
Yeah.
God, I see things this way, but you know
Yeah.
what? I'm going to give you this teddy bear because I know you can make it this way.
Right.
Um, and to be honest, it relieves the stress and
Mm.
the anxiety that will come with that of wanting
Right.
to have certain things in certain ways. And so I think it's one, making sure you're not idolizing that thing. And I think also too, a lot of times when we don't get certain things in our life is because we're making that thing our God.
Mm. That's so powerful. That's so powerful. I wanted to ask you, as you're giving up control and trusting the Lord and believing that he's got that bigger teddy bear, he's got that bigger promise. What has the win look like for you? How have you, in this season or maybe in past seasons, redefined the W, redefine the win, so that you can not just have a heart that's content in the season that you're in and trust him with what's in your hand, but also like have a heart of gratitude? Because I think that that's also important as we wait or as we trust God with what he has for us.
Sorry, the question is, how do I see it? What is it?
Sorry. Yeah. What does it look like to redefine the win in
Oh,
order
the
to,
when.
yeah.
Um, Peace. For me is
Hmm.
peace. Period.
Yeah.
Period. If I
Yeah.
have peace, I have won the lottery. uh,
Yeah.
I think we all combat lies, and there's certain things that we agree with knowingly or unknowingly, mentally. But I think for me, the win is when I do surrender it, and the fruit of that surrenderance is peace. That's the win for me. That's the
Yes.
win.
That's good.
I don't want to go outside of God's will. I mean, I say this all the time, but it's like, if we go outside of God's will to get what we want, we have
Mm.
to stay outside of his will to keep it.
Yeah.
So I don't want that either. I
Yeah.
don't want that either.
Yeah. That's right.
I want to be, I think for me, the win is being in the will of God and honoring the season that you're in. I think a lot of
Mm.
times we want to jump to that next season, but not realizing that the seasons that we're in, we need
Mm.
to honor them. There's certain things in this season that we need, the lessons that we're learning, the tools that we're grabbing, the things that God's exposing us to, the
Yeah.
revelations that come through us, through scripture, through word, through teachings. We need that in that season.
That's
And then when
good.
we get to the next season, we're prepared for that season. So I
That's
think the
right.
W is honoring the season that I'm in,
Yeah.
um, staying in this place of peace,
Yes. Yes.
and being in His will and not mine.
I love that. Yeah. Hey, now you be I don't know if anybody's ever told you, but you're a preacher. You be answering all these questions with like 2, 3 pointers, takeaways. I got some practical handles on how to wait on Lord and redefine the W. No, this is so good. This is so good. I wanted to ask you, as you're, on this journey with the podcast, what what excites you the most? What is it about podcasting, having these conversations that bring you joy? Like what's the inspiration and the heartbeat, and what gets you going as you're, scheduling out episodes and putting out episodes? Like
Yeah.
what excites you about all that?
What excites me the most is the potential eternal impact that it can have on somebody.
That's so
I think
good.
that excites me the most. Like, man, if this can have an eternal impact on somebody's life, that they can hear and see God through these conversations, then we've done
Mm, yeah.
enough. And also just like having great authentic conversations, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's not only for listeners and the audience and viewers to actually glean and learn from the guests, but I'm learning too. I'm
That's
learning
right.
along the way.
Yeah.
It's such a humbling seat to have, to be honest with you. And as we
Mm,
know, too much is required. So I think I want to do my best. I want to hear from the Lord of what the conversation should be. But I think probably what excites me the most is having a potential eternal impact on somebody's life.
yeah. I love that. I think about that often, that like the conversations that are being had has eternal ramifications to, like, people's destinies can be impacted, and even something as small as people's view on God can shift a little bit, or
Come
it
on.
can change in a way that
Yes.
that changes the direction of their life. And so that's
Yeah.
powerful. I really appreciate the way you handle conversations, because you could tell you always lead with curiosity, that you genuinely care. Every time I watch your episode, I could tell you're not just trying to get a response. You actually care about the person that you talk to, and you're having a genuine and authentic conversation with them. I personally, and maybe I need to be exposed to more content creators, but very rarely do I see that. I think, especially in today's day and age, we're always looking for clickbait. We're looking for
Yeah.
a viral moment. We're looking for something
Yeah.
that will evoke like a juicy or spicy response from our guests. But I could tell,
Yeah.
like, you actually love the people that you talk to, or love on the people you talk to. Can you talk to us a little bit about, like, how did you get there? Is that, again, something you've always had? Like, is it intentional? Is it just an outpouring of who you are already? Like, because I think that we need to see that more in content
Mm.
spaces.
I appreciate that. Thank you for those words. Yeah, I think just making sure you're moving with intentionality,
Mm,
with intention, and understanding the why in the conversation.
yeah,
And yeah, my content is not clickbaity. It's
yeah,
not that type of gossipy, that type of
yeah.
I can't afford to do that. I
Mm,
think that we cannot trade our authenticity for approval.
mm,
And I think for me, for so long, there were days where I'm like, oh my God, how does this not have more views? How does this not have more whatever? How does
yeah.
this not whatever? But if the impact
Hmm,
has been made,
hmm.
then we've done enough. So for
That's so
me,
good.
yeah, like I said, that too much is given, much is required. And so if someone is taking up their time and space, and has come and sat on my set,
Yeah.
like that is an exchange. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like, I owe them the same amount of love and respect that they have given me to even say yes. Like,
mm,
anytime a guest says yes or comes on the show, truly say I'm humbled by your yes, because I
yeah,
really am.
yeah,
Like, this is
yeah,
thank you for trusting me.
yeah.
And this isn't mine anyways, and so I have
Hmm.
someone to answer to. So
Wow.
I can't, this is not a way that it's just like, oh, we're gonna, you know, talk about this. No, it's an assignment.
Mm,
It's an assignment.
yeah.
And so I think leading the conversations with intention, understanding and knowing that this is an assignment, and understanding that this is bigger than me. And
Mm,
so there's reverence. There is reverence. And so maybe that you maybe feeling or seeing,
yeah.
but yeah, it's just humbling in itself in totality, where
Yeah.
it's humbling to be able to have these conversations and be entrusted with people's stories.
Yeah. Man, Natalie, I so appreciate you. Yeah, I do.
Of
Cause
course.
like it's so refresh. And the reason why I'm refreshed by that is because you brought your reason to you brought it back to purpose. And I think
Yeah.
especially in this space, a lot of the win is, AdSense and brand, it's like views
Yeah.
and numbers is going to fill my pockets, but like we're not talking about what will feed our soul and what would fill our hearts. And I think in a lot of ways, to your point, you said it so eloquently, we're going to have to answer to somebody one day. And God's going to ask us like what we did with our opportunities, with our gifts, with our platforms. And some things aren't worth the dollar amount, that some things are just not worth the viral moments. And I think that especially in today's day and age, it's hard to take the high route, but you've done it so well. And so to hear your motivation behind that is truly encouraging, truly
Oh,
encouraging.
thank you for that.
Yeah, well, I feel like I can sit here and talk to you like all day long. I feel like we just scratched the surface. I'm looking at the time and I'm like, I can't believe it's already almost time to close out the conversation. But I did have one more question for you before we wrap up. I wanted to ask you, as you kind of think about the future of Now with Natalie, as you think about your influence, when you think about what God has entrusted you with, what's next and what are you working towards and what are you hoping that God won't just do for those who are tuning in, but what God will do on the inside of who you are?
Mm, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely can see how he's using this to transform me internally,
Mm,
which, like I said, is like continuing to die to self daily.
yeah.
What am I working on? Soon coming on a devotional book. So that's one
Okay.
thing that we can
Nice.
look out for.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that the desire is for God to do what only He can do
Mm,
exceedingly abundantly above
mm,
all, with Natalie, and do what He wants to do with it.
yeah.
Um, and take it to the ends of the earth. That is a
Mm,
desire of mine. But again, it's like, are you prepared for that? Are
yeah.
you positioning yourself for that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think the desire is for many, many people to gain impact and to see the
Mm,
Lord in and through these conversations,
yeah.
but more importantly, to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think for me, as you know, I think we have to be reminded that visibility does not define success. And
Mm,
so truly continuing to humble myself in private and undoing myself in private
wow.
and coming in private.
Mm,
So when you ask, what do I want him to do in and through me? It's just that I want to
mm,
be as clean as possible,
mm,
and I know that we all will have work to do until we go home, but
yeah.
um, I can't be out here having these conversations and I'm, maybe not living up to that standard. So I
Yeah.
think it's just continuing to see myself for who he's called me to be, but also give me the courage to submit my strength to his strength.
That's good. That's good. I love that. Well, we'll be praying for you in that regard.
Please.
You've got people rooting for you all the way in Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Oh,
here at
that
Shaping the
means a lot.
Culture.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah. So again, so encouraged by your content and having this conversation with you. I see why. And I really love what you're about. And I can't wait to see what God does with the platform, with the devotional, all of that. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
gracing
of
us with
course.
your time and your
Yeah.
wisdom. This was fun for me. Truly, if nobody got anything from this conversation, just know I got a whole lot out of it. And I don't think that's going to be the case, but just know I truly benefited from this conversation. So,
I did
uh,
as well. Thank you. And thank you for creating a space for people like myself and other people to be able to come and share their stories and,
yeah,
keep on keeping on. And I know it's not
yeah.
always easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you. I appreciate that, Natalie. Well,
Of course.
thank you. Thank you for everything. For those who are tuning in, hope this blessed y'all, encouraged y'all. Make sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment. Let us know how you enjoy this conversation. Encourage Natalie. Let her know how her words have impacted you. We appreciate y'all, fam. Until next time, peace and grace. Shaping the Code.